All right, welcome to the after show. I want to introduce you guys to Tonia. I always say her last name, Magras.
You nailed it.
Yes. I always want to like, I don't know, Spanish it up or something. I'm like Magras or something. But Tonia, so I had her on my podcast, Passion Project, Ramiro, if you'd like to like and subscribe, last summer. She was talking about her movie, Do You Remember Me, which is based on her story, which is crazy. So I'm going to give you like a really brief elevator pitch of a long, when she was in here with me last summer, we talked for almost 2 hours, crying. Like, it was, okay.
What?
So, back in the 80s, went to college, University of Miami. Made friends with a guy who was on the football team. I'm just going to fast forward to the part where one night, he and other players from the football team raped her. Yes.
What?
But wait, there's more. So now we're going to fast forward.
Jeez.
We're going to fast forward 30 years later, almost 30.
38. It'll be 38 this May.
Yeah. So she gets a Facebook, like you got a Facebook friend request.
Message friend request.
Yeah. From the guy. And she immediately hit him back with Do You Remember Me? Name of the movie. And
Ooh,
Wow.
that's deep.
he didn't know. He didn't remember. She reminded him. And then he immediately, of course, blocked and all that stuff.
Oh my God.
But Tonia went on before that and was very smart and got all of his other social media information.
I screenshot his entire life.
Yeah.
Good for you.
See, when you first said that, the first thought that came into my head was he was reaching out to you to apologize because maybe he was on some kind of like journey or like maybe he had an addiction and it was one of the steps and he was reaching out to apologize. And the fact that he blocked you, that wasn't the case.
I think, honestly, he was just looking for faces, like new faces to become friends with. This guy's a predator. And so, yeah, that's what I took out of that whole situation.
Well, I have two questions. First, just how are you doing today?
Wow,
Just
thank you.
Are you
I am awesome.
Good.
I am awesome. I have an amazing husband. I have an amazing support team. I'm doing great.
Right.
I'm doing great.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, you said 38 years it'll be. When did you decide that you were ready to tell your story? Like, how did that come about? What was the moment that said, you know what, it's time to tell this story?
Wow. I don't know if I was ever ready. I knew that it was just something that I had to do. And honestly, and a professor at Fitchburg State University read my screenplay and shout out to Rochelle Dermer, and she said, you need to make this into a film. And she was my supervising producer on the project, and she kind of held my hand. I'm a documentary filmmaker by heart. That's all I've done. I was in news for 25 years, so I'm all about telling true stories. And so for this project, I had to direct actors. Like, I had to create scenes. I had to, and it was really an out-of-body experience. Like, I had to put people in positions that I was in to replicate what it was surreal. But I knew I was ready because I had the right people around me who were supporting me, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. It really was. But we're here and it's out, and I'm thrilled because it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do, was to people to hear the story and say, wow, I know somebody who went through that. Or I had a young girl on campus last week come up to me and who had seen the film, and she just like fell into my arms and started crying. And I'm like, my God, like, and tiny little girl.
The statistics are really high for assault on college campuses.
Yeah, but you know what, Pebbles? for the ones who report it.
Yep.
Yes.
So they say it's 1 out of 5 students on a college campus will have some type of episode with sexual violence or rape. But those are the ones that reported it. Like I tell people, I'm not in that statistic. I'm not. And it happened to me.
And it's not that she didn't, like, she told people, she went to the hospital and all that stuff. And this was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
When Leroy, you would remember this. University of Miami was like,
Yeah.
and they used to like be like, oh, they're like the bad boys or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So they had that reputation. So it was like when she told them, the police were kind of like, I mean, you could give the exact quote or whatever, but it was almost like, yeah, that's what they do, type of situation.
Yeah. And there's a scene when you watch the film, the scene in that film is going to make you throw something at the screen, because I really needed people to see how Nicky's a protagonist who is obviously based on my true story. You'll see that scene in the film and how that plays out. And Wow. That's the way it was.
So it wasn't like you didn't report it. It was more so they were covering it up because these are superstar football players that are going to go in the NFL and they're going to have big
they all
careers.
Went to the pros.
Yep.
They all went to the pros.
Wow. They all played pro.
Think about
now
that.
I'm going to ask you something, and I'm asking this because these are things that you are hearing currently with the whole Diddy situation, and you're almost hearing that when victims come forward years later, you almost hear people not blaming them per se, but being like, well, why did you wait so long? Like, why are you waiting until now all of a sudden, you're coming forward, and is it a money grab and this and that? Do you ever, first of all, how would you answer that question? And then second, have you ever been questioned as far as however you decided to handle your situation, if you did it the right way? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So to the first part, and I can only imagine and speculate that, you don't want to be the first and only. You don't want to be the only one. And to go after a conglomerate like Diddy, like, are you kidding me? And, and UM back in the 80s, it was the same thing. You didn't want to be the only one. And so I think that there is a safety in numbers. And that when you see that first person taking a step, and then you see the second and the third, and then you're like, okay, I feel like I can do this now because you see the first person.
That's a great way to explain it.
Yeah.
The safety in numbers.
The safety in numbers. Yeah. And to the second part, no one has really asked me why I didn't report it. You have to really dig deep into yourself and think about the horrors of what happened to me, and then think about that question before you ask it. It's not only about the fact that I was physically maimed, right? I had injuries that lasted for years.
Wow.
It is the mental and the emotional part of it that never goes away. I tell people the trauma never goes away. What I've learned to do and what I've been able to do is to know where it is, know what I need to do when I'm being triggered, and then I can get through it. The last scene in the film, which is the hardest part of the film to watch, or the second to the last scene in the film, is something I still do. I don't want to give it away. I want everyone to go watch the film. But it's still something I do. That is my kind of the way I cope sometimes. And so you find a way to cope. And it doesn't matter what the trauma is. You find a way to cope through it. And whatever that is, you need to make sure that the people around you understand that and can just manage that with you. And I have a husband who gets it. Like he just gets it. And Mark Souza, who plays my husband in the film, we spent a lot of time talking to him about that, because there is this instinct. I'm not going after men now, but I'm saying there is this instinct, like, okay, I'll fix it. Like, come here, I'll do this, I'll do that, or running up and like hugging you if I start crying. And sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you, in the midst of whatever that trigger is, you don't necessarily want someone running up and hugging you. Like, you're dealing with whatever, this muscle memory is that has created this new, this new trauma for you. And so you have to be able to communicate that to your partner, to your family, to your friends. Like, this is what I need you to do in that moment. And so we spent a lot of time with Mark really getting him to understand that, and understand what he needed to do physically and what he didn't need to do physically. Yeah.
So there's obviously a million different ways to tell the same story. How did you decide that this was the way you wanted to tell your story?
I thought it was important, and again, it's only 20 minutes, and we are working and we have conversations and works to make this into a feature. There's 18-year-old Nicky, and then there's present day Nicky. We didn't call her old Nicky. Present day Nicky. And so having to tell their stories, and you'll see in the film, it's almost, flashback is another term that you use in films, but it's really this way to see the parallel of these two women. So you see young Nicky in her prime. She just got injured from playing basketball and, all this other stuff. And so, but she's still at school, and she meets this guy, and that was her boy. Like, that was my boy. Like, it wasn't romantic. Like, that was my boy. We were both young. And so you see, like, all of that life she had in her taken away.
Yeah.
Right? And then you see present day Nicky, because of the trigger of getting this friend request, that she's right back at 18 years old.
Wow.
And then you see her that she's okay again. And so it was important for me to show that, because that's the part that's true. But it just never ends. It just never ends. And I'm good. I'm great, but, to the question that I answered for you, but it never ends.
And so many people are dealing with some type of trauma in their life. Like, really, I just feel like everyone that I know, like, what is that first step? Like, to give perspective, what does that first step look like into the healing process?
I did therapy, and when I did it, honestly, it must have been like 25 years ago. I was still so angry. And therapy, I love therapists, God bless them, but it's really hard to manage a trauma in 60 minutes, right?
Yes.
So
and it's like this time of the week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once a week, I want you to tell me everything about your life. I want you to be as detailed possible. Okay. All right. Well, so time's up, and we'll see you next week, right?
God.
And I stayed angry for so many years. I drank every day for 30 years. Every single day for 30 years. I've been sober now. It's this will be
good for you.
8 years in November.
Wow.
So that's how I coped, because alcohol made me happy. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to feel. I didn't have to do anything. I had my little wine here and my Heineken here, and then my vodka tonic here, and I was great.
Wow.
But when I stopped drinking, it all came back. It all came back. And so then, I had to do therapy again, because now it's like, all right. It's been packed away for 30 years, and now I have to deal with it. But because I was in a better place, I was in a safe place. I think people have to, when they think about therapy, they have to think about what happens outside that appointment, and make sure that it is as supportive and nurturing as that 60 minutes a week. Because if not, if you're going 60 minutes a week and oh my gosh, and then you come out and then it's like more noise and more, tension, and it's not going to work. So, before you make that step, I would just say, just like make sure that, you have that all around you, from your family, from your friends. And sometimes you got to get rid of people that don't.
Yeah.
That just don't fit that circle. Yeah. My circle's really small.
I feel like that's better a lot of times, because a lot of us have these peripheral people, and if they're not adding to you in a positive way,
right,
there's no need for it. I mean, especially the older we get, like, you really just want to have that small group of people that are going to add positivity and uplift you in ways, you know what I mean? As opposed to the draining negativity, because who needs that, especially people like that are going through certain traumas. And the fact that you had that trauma happen to you and then you had an addiction on top of it, now you have multiple things that you needed to work through and everything. So I give you so much credit for that, because that's just, it's amazing to see that and to see how great you're doing now is just, and with this movie too, this better be made into a feature because
100%
this is
will be. 100% will be.
For sure.
And when I tell you that I gave you the absolute I didn't give you any details to any of the stuff. I didn't give you any details as to what happened in the room. I didn't give you any details. She talked about being, alcoholic and stuff, but there was more stuff that happened after the alcoholism between now with your brother.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, there's a lot. Yeah. A lot. It's 100%
and it's life. I mean, it's life. And what Ramiro's referring to is my brother committed suicide in September of
sorry to hear
2022. Thank you. And before that, my husband's oldest daughter had committed suicide April of 2017. So, because that's the year I stopped drinking. So, life is really, really hard sometimes. Yes. It really is. And, but at the same time, lean into what the good is. We're all going to have to go through something. We're all going to have to go through something. Death is inevitable.
Got it.
I know how to speak. And so you just kind of have to, you got to roll with the punches. And it's not easy for everyone. And it's certainly not easy for me. I spend days in bed. I absolutely do. I just wake up. I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing it today. And I turn off my phone and I put my Golden Girls on, put my comforter on, and I'm good. And I'll sleep and I'll get up and maybe I'll eat something and I'll go back to bed. And I have those days. I had that day, like, it was 2 days before the premiere. It was a Tuesday before my premiere. And I had a lot of stuff to do. I had a premiere in 2 days. But my body just said, no, not today. And I think,
your mind.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you just have to lean into that.
Two questions. One's funny. Who's your favorite character on Golden Girls? I'm just curious. Who do you identify with the most?
I identify with Dorothy because Dorothy was my grandmother.
Okay.
Yes, Dorothy was my grandmother, and I'll say it because my grandmother influenced me creatively more than anyone in my life, and she was so smart, right? And she was, but she never felt great about herself. Right. And I think that Dorothy's character was always like, I'm the tall and ugly one. And at the end, I can do a spoiler alert for Golden Girls,
she
right?
can.
And they're all
At
dead.
the end, Dorothy wins.
Yeah.
Like she gets the guy. She rides off
didn't
in
see
the
that
limo.
episode yet. Damn it.
And then my second question is, does present day Nicky have an open line of communication with present day University of Miami?
No.
Is
No.
that
She
something
Bounced
that
the
you
next day, never went back.
never?
I've never been back to Miami.
Wow.
The city or anything. I've been through the airport, but I've never been back.
Have you thought about it? Since it sounds like, well, it is. There's a lot of healing going on with you, and then people who have seen the film are experiencing some type of healing. Hopefully, that's the goal. Do you think that's something that you would want to do with the University of Miami, since that's where it happened? Present day University of Miami.
I met through a mutual friend because I'm still in contact with people who I went to school with then. So a mutual friend, Bill, put me in contact with a woman who was a year behind me. So I left in 87 and she started the fall of 87. And she was an athlete. And so she called me, Bill was just like, I have this person who wants to talk to you. I told her about your film and she wants to talk to you. And we got on the phone and she started to explain the very same story as me.
My God.
The very same story. She described the room. She described what was said. She described what they did. And we sat on the phone. I was sitting on my patio and we were bawling for like 2 hours on the phone. And she had reported it. She told the coach. The coach then told the head coach of the football team, who then told the women's basketball coach, tell her to just put it away.
I can't.
Isn't that crazy?
It's not surprising.
No.
Isn't that crazy?
Unfortunately, that's what's so infuriating.
And so she finished.
Wow.
She finished.
Wow.
The same guy, Dale, the same guy, probably the same others. And she finished. And she talks about that numb, like she doesn't remember anything about it. And I remember asking her, like, did you ever go back? And she's like, no. And is that important to my healing? I don't think so. I don't need to see where it happened. I don't need that. But the trauma has kept me from just leaving the airport, and that's something I'm gonna have to work through. But I have my issues with Florida now anyway, so I don't even know if that's something that I have to do. But yeah, I don't know if I ever will.
One more. I'm sorry, y'all. One more question. I see the cross.
Yeah.
What role has religion and faith played in your healing?
1,000,000% huge. But I had to stop hurting myself before I could let my faith in God help me the way I knew it could help me. I hated God. Understandably so.
I hear you.
I was 18 years old, 100 pounds, soaking wet, almost demolished physically. I hated God. Don't talk to me about God. Don't tell me anything about what this is and what this all means, because why would God let something like that happen to me? What kind of God would let something like that happen to me? And I tried to destroy myself. I tried to commit suicide. It didn't work. I ate a bottle of Tylenol and I just had an upset stomach for like a week, and then I found alcohol and I drank, and it was like, hey, let's have a cookout. Like, it did something different for me. But it took me a long time, and I was raised in the church. I was baptized Catholic, my father's side of the family, and then ultimately transitioned into Christian and Pentecost, but it took me a long time. And even when I went back to church, and now it's been like maybe 15 years where I've really been back to church, I was still drinking at the time because I was still angry. I was still angry. I'm still angry, sober and all. I'm still angry. But what I came to realize, and I think that what my faith has shown me, is that I have a purpose in all of this. And that purpose is possibly to help other women tell their stories. Maybe my purpose is by telling my story, he will kind of understand what he did, and I really don't care if he does it or not. He has 4 daughters. Maybe they will see it one day and, say, hey, Dad, you have the same name as the person in the film. And,
Oh, so you do reveal the person in the film.
So for legal reasons, I had to change the first letter of his last name. My attorney said, just do that. Just protect yourself with that. Okay. So, but Dale, you know who you are. Anyways.
Leroy, you'd recognize him. When she showed me his stuff, I was like, holy crap, I know who this dude is.
Yeah. And so, it took a long time, and I'm there. I'm there now, but it took a long time. It took a long time. And, and my husband will say, you don't understand how God was protecting you through all of this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I drank for 30 days. I drove. I went to work. Alcohol was always in my system. I never, ever got pulled over for DUI. I never hit anything. No one ever hit me. I still was crushing it at work, winning Emmys and doing this and doing that. And I had to say, oh, wow. Wow.
That was the first thing I thought of when you said that you took the bottle of pills and you just got an upset stomach. I was like, that's where God stepped in and saved you. That was one of the examples. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Like,
when you talked about keeping your circle, small and people supporting you, how do you recognize? Because I think a lot of people can't recognize. How do you recognize the right people to be in your life, and I think we all know who we need to get rid of. But how do you recognize the people who you really should have in your life?
I think people will reveal that to you. And I think that, at my age, I'm 56 years young. I don't have time for the drama. I wake up in the morning and I immediately talk to 3 people. I talk to my daughter, Ashley. I talk to my mom, and I talk to my husband. Those are my 3 morning calls. And my daughter called me this morning. She started singing to me. She was just like, good luck on your interview. Blah, blah, blah. And she can't sing, but she just, she was singing. And then, and then my mom calls, and that is how I start my day. That is how I start my day every single day. And then other than that, I have people that reach out from time to time, but that's my circle. That is my circle. Because without these 3 people, like and if one doesn't pick up, I know the next one will. That is my circle. I have a great family. I have a great extended family. But you really have to know your go-tos. Like I tell people, it's like you phone a friend. You always have to have those 3 people, and out of the 3, one of them is going to pick up, and those are my 3. Yeah.
Wow. When you got together with your husband, did you know your husband in college or anything? Or
no, I met my husband at a bar in St. Thomas called the Duffy's Love Shack.
I love it.
All right. That's what's up. It has romance in the name.
Because I think a lot of times when people experience that, the type of trauma that you did, it's hard to trust men. It's hard to,
Yeah.
How did you I don't know if it's letting your guard down and when in the process did you tell him your story?
I told, unlike other relationships, and all my relationships were hard for different reasons. Either, and I didn't always tell my story. I think there's 2 relationships I told my story to. My ex-husband, and it took me years to tell him about it. And then, but I met Greg June 18th, 2010 at the Duffy's Love Shack. And a month later, and we're talking on the phone, a month later, I went back down to St. Thomas to see him. My dad lives in St. Thomas, so, you know, it's a regular thing for me to be down there. And I told him, and we cried, and he said 3 words. He said, "I got you."
Mm-hmm. That's dope.
And he's been telling me that ever since.
Girl.
That's what's
He's been
up.
telling me that ever since, you know. Anything, I'm like, oh, hey, I got these papers to grade, and then I have this essay to write, and he's just like, okay, what do you need? I got you. Like,
Yeah.
it's just that is our vocabulary with each other. That's our love language. And so I have always felt 1,000,000% safe with Greg. Greg knows my triggers. Greg knows the things that still are hard for me. Greg knows, he knows when to come in, and he knows when to leave me alone. And that's all the love language that we built, but we built it based on what I needed, and therefore he was able to fulfill that and wanted to fulfill that. And then I was able in turn, because Greg has trauma as well, then I was able in turn to learn his love language and how that works. And that it's just so important. And it took me a long time to find someone like this. And, you know, we're riding this till the wheels fall off this week, because,
You're like, I ain't doing this again.
I am not teaching another person about me. And nor do I want to, Greg. But it was those 3 words.
Yeah.
Like,
That's all you need to hear.
that's all I needed to hear. You know, and I can't remember what other conversations were like, but it wasn't that. And at that point, I knew, all right.
That's even more important than I love you.
Yeah.
It
is.
I love you all the time.
time.
Yeah.
But I got you.
Yes.
Wow.
Listen.
Hey, there's a great, no, it's going to happen. It's a fact. There are going to be people listening to this who have gone through the same type of trauma or something close to what you've gone through. And I know quite a few people who it's something that they really have kept to themselves. They really don't want to talk about it. Some haven't revealed it to anybody. If you had 60 seconds to send a message to those people, what would you tell them?
Take your time. Do self-care. It's not an easy thing to do. You know, coming here and talking about this, I have to do some self-care before. Every time I talk about it, I have to do some self-care before. And know that when it's out there, it's out there. And again, making sure you have that circle, that support, that everything is so important. Some people are going to die with their stories inside of them, and that's still okay. That's still okay. But don't die with regret. If it's something that you feel like you have to get out, find the right people, find a therapist, a family member, you know, whatever it is. My mom, you know, she's been a part of this my whole life, right? And she came to the premiere and she still cries, and she still's like, I wish, and it's like, you couldn't have been there, but you were there, because when they threw me out of the dorm, that was the first person I thought about, and I just started running. And adrenaline, oh my gosh, that's a real thing. Like that was crazy. I just started running, and all I could think about was getting back to my mom. You gotta make sure that whatever that circle is, and I didn't know how Greg was going to react. I didn't know if he was going to say, you know, all right, you know what, this is way too much for me to handle. We had fun. You know, let's go get a couple of beers and chill on the beach, and we'll call it a day. I didn't know. But I knew that at the time I was okay to do it. It's going to be the hardest thing in the world, and I don't say that lightly. It's going to be the hardest thing in the world. But love on yourself and make sure that you have the right people in your circle to take care of you.
Thank you.
Well,
Where
thank you
Where can people see the short film right now?
Okay, so it's on YouTube. Okay. Do You Remember Me? You can Google it. It's on the Hull Bay Productions media channel, or you can just go to hullbayproductions.com. It's right on the home page.
Which is your production company?
Which is
with
my
your
production
husband.
company. Yep. Yes, sometimes others. So if you just do hullbayproductions.com, it's right on the home page. Like it, share it, tell a friend. It is, you know, it does deal. This is the warning that's at the top of the film. The film does have references to sexual violence. Viewer discretion is advised. We did not shoot a rape scene. I need everyone to know that. You do not look at anything like that in the film. You don't. It's obviously implied, and yeah, and I pray that people watching it who are triggered by it can find a place to get the healing, because it's just that important.
Awesome. Tonia, thank you for coming in.
Thank you
for
once
sharing.
again.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck with everything.